Hello, welcome to my engineering physics channel. This is Sanjeev Bade from KJ Somaya Institute of Engineering and Information Technology. This is our session 1 on semiconductor physics, and in this session we will be discussing some prerequisites required like formation of energy band, intrinsic and extrinsic semiconductors, and then we will get introduced to direct gap semiconductors and indirect gap semiconductors. So for semiconductor physics, this will be the flow of discussion. In the beginning, we will discuss some of the prerequisites required, like how the energy bands are formed, what is intrinsic semiconductor, what is extrinsic semiconductor, the energy bands in conductors, semiconductors and insulators. Semiconductor diode also we will discuss, IV characteristics in forward bias, reverse bias also we will discuss whenever required. Then we will define what is direct gap semiconductor and what is indirect gap semiconductor. Then we will get introduced to Fermi energy level, Fermi Dirac distribution function, what is the position of Fermi level in intrinsic and extrinsic semiconductor, what is the effect of impurity concentration on the Fermi level, what is the effect of temperature on the Fermi level. So all these things will be discussed in the second session. In the third session, we will discuss mobility, conductivity, current density concepts. We will get some important relations here which will be useful for solving the numericals. Then in the fourth session we will discuss Hall effect, which is very important effect. In the fifth session we will get introduced to PN junction. We will see what happens to the PN junction when it is unbiased, when it is forward biased and when it is reverse biased. So here we will discuss these IV characteristics again, and at the end, in the last session, we will discuss applications of semiconductor. Actually we will be discussing applications as a semiconductor diode only, light emitting diode, Zener diode, photovoltaic cell, that is a solar cell. So this will be the flow of discussion. The number of sessions required will be 6 and marks weightage is around 22 to 24. The outcome of this module will be, after learning this module, the learner will be able to comprehend the concepts of semiconductor physics and applications of semiconductors in electronic devices. In an atom, there is a positively charged nucleus, and around this nucleus electrons revolve in the circular orbits. In orbit number 1 there are 2 electrons, in orbit number 2 there are 8 electrons, in orbit number 3 there are 18 electrons, and in orbit number 4 there are 32 electrons. So number of electrons in the given orbit is equal to 2n square. The 2 electrons in orbit number 1 will be characterized with energy E1. Then 8 electrons in orbit number 2 will be characterized with energy E2, 18 electrons in orbit number 3 will be characterized with energy E3, and so on. But actually these 2 electrons will need 2 energy levels to get accommodated. These 2 electrons in orbit number 1 are called as 1s electrons, and there will be 2 1s levels to accommodate them, which will have energy close to this E1. Out of these 8 electrons in the second orbit, 2 electrons are called as 2s electrons. So there will be 2 2s levels to accommodate them, and there will be 6 2p levels to accommodate the remaining 6 electrons, which will have the energy close to this E2. The 18 electrons in orbit number 3, out of these 18, 2 will be 3s electrons, 6 3p electrons are there, and 10 3d electrons will be there. In orbit number 4, out of these 32 electrons, there will be 2 4s electrons, 6 4p electrons, 10 4d electrons, and 14 4f electrons. So the electrons will get accommodated in these energy levels. In an isolated atom, electrons are tightly bound and have sharp discrete energy levels. So let us consider an electron in this particular atom. This electron will have energy level E1 associated with it. Let us consider one more atom, and let us consider the same electron in that particular atom. Now when the two atoms are far apart from each other, the energy level of this electron will be same as the energy level of this electron. But When these atoms are brought together, they form an interacting system. And as they form an interacting system, the wave functions of these electrons will begin to overlap, and therefore the energy corresponding to these wave functions will split into two energy levels. So when the two atoms are brought close together to form an interacting system, the energy of these two electrons will no longer be same. When they are far apart from each other, isolated from each other, the energy of these two electrons will be same. But when they form an interacting system, the energy of these two electrons will no longer be same. And this is in accordance with Pauli's exclusion principle, which states that no two electrons in a given interacting system can have same quantum state and therefore same energy. So energy of these two electrons in the two atoms which are brought close to each other will not be same, and this will result in splitting of this single energy level into two energy levels which will lie very close to each other. If we bring three atoms close together, then these three electrons will need three energy levels to get accommodated, and therefore this single energy level will split into three energy levels which will lie very close to each other. Now in a solid, we bring n number of atoms close to each other. So when n number of atoms form an interacting system, then it becomes a solid. So in n number of atoms, there will be n number of such electrons, and to accommodate this n number of electrons, now we will need n number of energy levels, because according to Pauli's exclusion principle, no two electrons can have identical energy level in an interacting system. So if there are n number of electrons, to accommodate those n number of electrons, we will need n number of energy levels. So this single energy level which accommodates this particular electron in an atom will now split in n number of energy level to accommodate all these n number of electrons from n number of atoms. So this splitting of single energy level into n number of energy levels which lie very close to each other results in formation of energy band. So this is the energy band which is formed, which will accommodate the n number of electrons from n number of atoms. So how the energy bands are formed? Energy bands are formed due to splitting of single energy level into n number of energy levels, because n number of atoms form an interacting system when they come close together to form a solid. So in solid, we will talk always about this energy bands. So to form a solid, large number of atoms are brought together, and as we bring the atoms closer and closer, the initial quantized energy level will split into number of energy levels. So as more and more number of atoms come close together, the energy level will split into more and more number of levels. So this will result in formation of energy band. The atoms can be brought together, brought closer till the equilibrium interatomic distance is reached. So we cannot reduce the distance between the atoms further. So the final picture of the energy band will be clear at this particular point. Let us try to understand the formation of energy bands with an example. So we will discuss formation of energy band in diamond. Diamond means carbon, and for carbon the atomic number is 6 and the electronic structure will be 1s2, 2s2, 2p2. That means in each atom there will be 2 1s electrons, 2 2s electrons and 2 2p electrons. Each atom in carbon will have 2 1s state to accommodate these 2 1s electrons. There will be 2 2s states per atom to accommodate the 2 2s electrons. There will be 6 2p states per atom which can accommodate 6 2p electrons. But how many 2p electrons are there? Only 2. So in an atom, out of these 6 2p states, only 2 will be accommodated. Higher states will be empty. When we bring n number of atoms close together, each of these energy state will split into n number of states. So now we will have 2n number of 1s states, 2n number of 2s states and 6n number of 2p states. So as we bring carbon atoms close to each other, as we reduce the interatomic distance between the carbon atoms, this 1s energy levels will split into 2n number of 1s energy states, and this 2s levels will again split into 2n number of states, and 2p states will split into 6n number of states. So there are 6 2p states, so total 6n states will be available when n number of atoms are brought together. As the energy levels are split in this band which is formed, there will be 2n number of states and 2n number of electrons. Here there will be 2n number of states and 2n number of electrons. Here there will be 6n number of states, but only 2n number of electrons will be there. So 4n number of states will be empty here. As we reduce the interatomic distance, as this 2s energy level and 2p states are very close to each other, due to splitting, these bands will grow in size, and as the bands grow in size, as the difference between these two energy states is very small, they can merge into a single band. So they merge into a single band. So here, due to the merging of these two bands, we get a single band which will have 8n number of states and 4n electrons. So 2n plus 6n, 8n number of states will be there, and 2n plus 2n, 4n number of electrons will be there. And after that, as we reduce the interatomic distance further, the field energy levels will get separated from the empty energy levels, and this empty band is formed with 4n number of states, 0 electrons, and this field band is formed with 4n number of states and 4n number of electrons. So we can reduce the distance between the atoms till equilibrium interatomic distance is reached. So at this point we can draw the energy band diagram. So at this point we can see this is 1s band which is completely filled. There are 2n states and 2n electrons. This is one band in which there will be 4n states and 4n electrons. So this is also completely filled, and here there are 4n number of states and 0 electrons. So this band is completely empty. So we can call this uppermost field band as the valence band, and this lowest empty band as the conduction band. Why this is lowest empty band? Where are the other bands? The other bands will correspond to the energy levels, energy states 3s, 3p, 3d. There are no electrons in those energy levels, so the bands corresponding to them will be empty. So this will become lowest empty band, and therefore it is called as the conduction band. So from this diagram we can draw the energy band diagram for diamond. Just extend this and we will get one band which is completely filled, 2n number of states and 2n number of electrons. Extend this, we will get one more band here, 4n number of states and 4n number of electrons. Extend this, we will get one band with 4n number of states and 0 electrons. There will be some more empty bands above this, 3s band and 3p band, 3d band. There are no electrons in those bands, so those are empty bands. So here we can see this is a completely empty band, and these are the field bands. This is the uppermost field band which we are calling as valence band. Valence band is defined as the uppermost field band, and this is the lowest empty band which is called as the conduction band. So conduction band is defined as the lowest empty band. Now conduction will be possible only if we have electrons and empty states in the same band. So here this is completely field band, so electrons are there but empty states are not there, and therefore there will be no conduction. Here there are empty states available, large number of empty levels are available, but no electrons to move through those empty states, and therefore no conduction will be possible. Conduction will be possible only when we get some electrons in this band which can move freely through the large number of empty states, or we can get some empty states in this band through which the electrons which are available in large number can move through. So conduction will be possible only when there will be at least one band which will have electrons and empty states both. Now having the empty states in this lower band will be very difficult, because to have empty states in this lower band, electron will have to get transferred from this band to the conduction band. which will require large amount of energy, so it will not be possible. So this lower field band will never participate in the conduction. Similarly, the electrons from this highest field band will not get transferred to the upper empty bands, and therefore these upper empty bands will also not participate in the conduction process. So as far as conduction is concerned, only this conduction band and valence band are important, because the transfer of electrons, transition of electrons can occur only between these two energy bands. When the electrons transfer from valence band to conduction band, they will create empty states in the valence band, and electrons will be available in the conduction band, which can move freely through the empty energy levels, and electrons can move through the empty energy levels created when the electrons leave the valence band. So as far as conduction properties are concerned, only conduction band and valence band are important. So whenever we draw the energy band diagram, we will show only these two energy bands in the further discussion. The lower field bands or upper empty bands will not be shown. So after understanding the meaning of valence band and conduction band, now we can classify solids on the basis of band theory. Valence band is the uppermost field band and conduction band is the lowest empty band. The lower field bands and upper empty bands will not participate in the conduction. Why? Because for conduction to occur, we need the band which will have empty states and electrons both, and there are no chances of creation of empty states in the lower field bands and no chances of getting electrons to the bands which are empty and which lie above the conduction band. Empty states can be created in the valence band if the electrons make a transition from valence band to conduction band. So if empty states are created in valence band, conduction will be possible due to the electrons moving through those empty states, and when the electrons come to the conduction band, the conduction is again possible as these electrons can move freely through large number of empty levels. So they are called as free electrons. Now the conduction will occur only if the electrons can make a transition from valence band to conduction band. In case of insulator, the energy gap, which is the gap between the conduction band and valence band, top of the valence band and bottom of the conduction band, is greater than 5 electron volts. And as this energy gap is very large, it will not be possible for the electrons from valence band to get transferred to the conduction band, and therefore valence band will remain completely filled, there will be no empty states available, and conduction band will remain completely empty, there will be no electrons available for conduction, and therefore conduction will not take place. So in insulator, due to large energy gap between the valence band and conduction band, electrons cannot make transition from valence band to conduction band, and we will not get a band which will have electrons and empty states both, and therefore conduction will not be possible. Valence band will remain completely filled and conduction band will remain completely empty, and therefore conduction will not occur. In conductor, the gap between the conduction band and valence band will be 0. So there is no energy gap. So actually we can say the conduction band and valence band overlap with each other. Conduction band will have large number of empty levels and valence band have large number of electrons. So due to this overlapping, we get a single band over here which will have empty levels and electrons both. So these electrons can move freely through the empty levels available in the conduction band. So the electrons in the conductor metal are called as the free electrons. So because they can move freely through the empty levels available. So in conductor, the conduction will occur because empty levels and electrons both are available in the same band. In semiconductor, the energy band diagram is almost similar to the insulator. The only difference is energy gap is small. In insulator, the energy gap is greater than 5 electron volts. In semiconductor, the energy gap is of the order of 1 electron volt. So this 1 electron volt energy can be easily obtained by the electrons in valence band, and they can make a transition to the conduction band. Once the electrons in the valence band go to conduction band, they will leave behind empty states in the valence band. These empty states are called as holes. So the electrons can move through these holes and conduction will be possible. And as the electrons come to the conduction band, the electrons can move freely through the empty levels, large number of empty levels available in the conduction band. So conduction will be due to the electrons in conduction band as well as the holes created in the valence band. So in a semiconductor, conduction is possible due to two types of carriers: free electrons in conduction band and empty states, that is holes in the valence band. This EC we are using to denote the bottom of the conduction band, and EV is the top level of the valence band. So EG will obviously be equal to EC minus EV. So after understanding the classification of solids on the basis of energy band diagrams, now we will discuss the semiconductors. So we will first discuss some basic prerequisites required, and then we will move ahead with the discussion of Fermi energy level in semiconductor and how this Fermi energy level is important in the semiconductor devices. So the semiconductors are group 4 elements, means they will have 4 electrons in the outermost orbit. Silicon atomic number is 14, so electronic configuration will be 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p2. So 3s2, 3p2, there will be 2 3s electrons and 2 3p electrons in the outermost orbit. So there are 4 electrons in the third orbit. Germanium, the atomic number is 32, so there will be 4 electrons in the orbit number 4, which is the outermost orbit. So in semiconductors, usually there will be 4 electrons in the outermost orbit. So in order to get 8 electrons in the valence orbit, the semiconductor atom, in this case a silicon is shown as the semiconductor atom. So silicon atom will combine with 4 neighboring silicon atoms. So this silicon atom is combining with 1, 2, 3 and 4 neighboring silicon atoms. So these 2 electrons are shared by these 2 atoms, these 2 electrons are shared by these 2 atoms, and these 2 electrons are shared by these 2 atoms, and these 2 electrons are shared by these atoms. So this sharing of electrons will result in covalent bonds which will hold these atoms together. So the forces that hold the atoms together in the semiconductor, like silicon or germanium, are called as covalent bonds. So in semiconductors, neighboring atoms form covalent bonds by sharing of electrons with each other. Let us discuss intrinsic semiconductors now. Intrinsic semiconductors are the semiconductors in pure form, extremely pure form. So no impurities are added. At absolute zero temperature in intrinsic semiconductor, all these valence electrons are bound to the covalent bonds, tightly bound to the covalent bonds, and hence there are no free electrons available for conduction, and the semiconductor will behave like an insulator. As the temperature increases, some of these electrons will get enough energy to break the covalent bond, and once the covalent bonds are broken, the electrons will become free for the movement. And when we apply the electric field across the semiconductor, this movement of the electrons will get a particular direction, giving rise to electric current. So this is how the current is obtained on the basis of covalent bond theory. Let us discuss how the current is obtained on the basis of energy band diagram now. So let us discuss the intrinsic semiconductors on the basis of energy band diagram. Now let us try to understand the conduction properties of intrinsic semiconductor on the basis of energy band diagram. This is the energy band diagram for intrinsic semiconductor. In this diagram, the lower field bands and upper empty bands are not shown because they do not participate in conduction. This is the uppermost field band, which is called as valence band, and this is lowest empty band, which is called as conduction band. EV is the energy level that denotes the top of the valence band. EC is the energy that denotes the bottom of the conduction band. So EG, the energy gap, will be equal to EC minus EV. Now while discussing the conduction properties, we'll just keep in mind that for conduction to be possible, there should be electrons and empty states available in the same band. In this case, at very low temperature, in intrinsic semiconductor, at very low temperature, the electrons in valence band will be in the valence band only. They will not get enough energy to go to the conduction band. So valence band will be completely filled, and as the electrons are not coming to the conduction band will be completely empty, and therefore there will be no conduction. But as we increase the temperature, the electrons in valence band will get sufficient energy and they will get transferred to the conduction band. So they will make a transition to the conduction band. Once they come to the conduction band, we will get free electrons in the conduction band. Why they are called as free? Because some electrons in large number of empty states, so they can move freely. So conduction is possible due to these electrons in the conduction band, and as the holes are created in the valence band, because electrons have left the valence band, so they will leave behind empty energy levels in the valence band. So these empty states are called as the holes. So these holes can also contribute to the current, because the electrons which are available in large in number in the valence band can move through these empty states that are created. That is, the electrons in valence band can move through these holes, giving rise to the current. So in semiconductor, current is obtained due to electrons in conduction band and holes created in the valence band. So when you apply the electric field, these electrons and holes will get a particular direction to their flow, giving rise to the current. So in a semiconductor, there will be two components of current due to free electrons in the conduction band and the current due to holes in the valence band. As you increase the temperature in intrinsic semiconductor, more and more electrons will get transferred from valence band to conduction band, and therefore the current will increase. So in intrinsic semiconductor, current will increase with increase in temperature. So conductivity of intrinsic semiconductor is directly proportional to the temperature. With the increase in temperature, conductivity also increases. When the electron in the valence band gets enough energy and makes a transition to the conduction band, we get one electron in conduction band and one empty state, one hole in the valence band. So this process is called as electron-hole pair generation. So whenever electron from valence band make a transition to the conduction band, we get one electron in conduction band and one hole in valence band. This phenomenon is called as electron-hole pair generation. So for electron-hole pair generation, energy needs to be absorbed. These electrons in the conduction band will stay here for some time, and they will make a transition to valence band also, because the electrons in conduction band means they are having higher energy and will not be stable. They will remain in conduction band only for short time, and then they will automatically make a transition to the valence band. So when the electrons make a transition to valence band to recombine with a hole in the valence band, in that process they can release the energy, and this process is called as the recombination. This recombination is utilized in the applications like semiconductor laser or light emitting diode. So we'll talk more about this recombination when we discuss the light emitting diode under the applications of semiconductors at the end. There are two commonly used semiconductors, silicon and germanium, but usually silicon is preferred over germanium. So let us try to understand why silicon is preferred over the germanium. Silicon is preferred over germanium because of its superior thermal properties. Maximum operational temperature for germanium devices is around 80 degrees centigrade, while for silicon devices it may be used up to 160 degrees centigrade. So operational temperature range is more for silicon devices. Also at room temperature, silicon crystal has almost no free electrons compared to the germanium crystal. So silicon is more tilted towards the ideal behavior. So that's why silicon is preferred over the germanium. Extrinsic semiconductor, also called as doped semiconductors. Doping means adding impurity atoms to the semiconductor to increase either number of free electrons or the number of holes. When the semiconductor is doped, it is called as extrinsic semiconductor. There are two types of extrinsic semiconductor depending on the type of impurity, N-type semiconductor and P-type semiconductor. Let us first discuss N-type semiconductor. In N-type semiconductor, a pentavalent impurity such as antimony, arsenic or phosphorus is added to the pure semiconductor to get extra conduction electron, extra electrons for conduction. This pentavalent atoms will have 5 valence electrons, 5 electrons in the outermost orbit. 4 of them will get involved in the covalent bonds with 4 neighboring semiconductor atoms, and 5th electron remains free to move. It is loosely bound electrons and therefore it can be made free very easily and will contribute to the conduction. So in N-type semiconductor, the conduction will be mainly due to this extra 5th electron which is not shared in the covalent bonds. From the energy band perspective, we can say that when we add pentavalent impurity, it gives rise to new energy levels which are called as donor levels just below the conduction band, and these extra electrons will be there in these donor levels. These donor levels are very close to the conduction band, and the gap between the conduction band and donor levels is very small as compared to the gap between conduction band and valence band. So with very little rise in temperature, almost all the electrons from these donor levels are transferred to the conduction band. Very few electrons will go from valence band to conduction band. So if you compare the number of electrons in conduction band coming from these donor levels with the number of electrons in conduction band coming from valence band, then the number of electrons coming from donor energy levels will be very large as compared to the number of electrons coming from valence band. As a result of this, the number of electrons in conduction band will be very large as compared to the number of holes created in the valence band. So in N-type semiconductor, as number of electrons in conduction band are very large as compared to number of holes in valence band, electrons in conduction band are called as majority carriers and holes in valence band are called as minority carriers. So in N-type semiconductor, we say current is mainly due to the electrons and current due to the holes in valence band is negligible. In P-type semiconductor, a trivalent impurity such as aluminium or boron is added to pure semiconductor to get extra vacant state. The trivalent atoms will have 3 electrons in the valence orbit, and all these 3 electrons form the covalent bond with 3 neighboring semiconductor atoms, and one bond is left incomplete and gives rise to a empty state, empty location. This empty location can be utilized by the electrons for the movement. So in the P-type semiconductor, the electrons can move through this empty location to give rise to the current. Now from the energy band perspective, we can say that when we add a trivalent impurity to the semiconductor, it gives rise to new energy levels which are called as acceptor levels just above the valence band. So the gap between acceptor levels and valence band is very small, and with a little rise in temperature, many electrons from valence band go to the acceptor levels, giving rise to holes inside the valence band. Very few electrons will manage to go to the conduction band, and therefore will be number of electrons in conduction band will be very less as compared to the number of holes created in the valence band, because there is one more reason for creation of holes, and that reason is electrons from valence band going to the acceptor levels. So very large number of electrons are going to the acceptor levels, so very large number of holes are created in the valence band. So number of holes in valence band now will be very large as compared to number of electrons in conduction band. So in p-type semiconductor, holes are the majority carriers and electrons are the minority carriers. In p-type semiconductors, the current will be mainly due to the holes in the valence band. Electrons in conduction band are minority carriers. This diagram will show us position of donor levels and acceptor levels when different type of impurity is added to the semiconductor. So the semiconductor under consideration here is silicon. For silicon, the energy gap is 1.12 electron volts. This is the center of the forbidden gap. When we add antimony, then it gives rise to the donor levels 0.039 electron volt below the conduction band. For phosphorus, the donor levels are created 0.044 electron volts below the conduction band, and for arsenic, the donor levels are created 0.049 electron volts below the conduction band. When we add boron impurity to the semiconductor atom, silicon here, then acceptor levels are created 0.045 electron volts above the valence band, EV. When we add aluminium, then acceptor levels are created 0.057 electron volts above the valence band, and when we add gallium, then acceptor levels are created 0.065 electron volts above the valence band. Direct gap semiconductor and indirect gap semiconductors. In order to understand the meaning of this direct gap semiconductor and indirect gap semiconductors, we need to know what are these parabolas and what do they represent. So for that, we will have to go in the quantum mechanics. From quantum mechanics, we know that electron can be represented by a wave having the wavelength lambda is equal to h upon p, and energy of the electron can be given by p square by 2m, that can be written as h bar square k square by 2m, where h bar is Planck's constant, p is momentum of the electron. So momentum is equal to h bar k in quantum mechanics. So p square by 2m can be written as h bar square k square by 2m. H bar is Planck's constant, k is propagation constant. So we can write from this E is directly proportional to k square, which is equation of parabola. So when we plot the graph of E versus k, it will be a parabola. The upper parabola in the conduction band represents free electron, and the lower parabola in valence band represent the holes. If maximum of valence band and minimum of conduction band occur at the same momentum value, then it is called as direct band gap semiconductor. And if maximum of valence band and minimum of conduction band occur at different value of k, then such semiconductors are called as indirect band gap semiconductors. Let us differentiate the two direct band gap semiconductors and indirect band gap semiconductors in the further slide. This is the differentiation between direct band gap semiconductor and indirect band gap semiconductor. In the graph of E versus K, in case of direct band gap semiconductor, maximum of valence band and minimum of conduction band occur at the same momentum value. That means for the same value of K. In case of indirect band gap semiconductor, maximum of valence band and minimum of conduction band occur at two different values of K. That is for two different momentum values, because momentum and K are related. P is equal to h bar K. So now in this direct band gap semiconductors, if electron wants to go from valence band to conduction band, it need not undergo any change in its momentum. It can directly go because K is same for them. Momentum is same for the electron in conduction band and valence band. But in indirect band gap semiconductor, if electron wants to make a transition from valence band to conduction band, first it will have to undergo the momentum change. So first momentum needs to be changed and then it can make a transition. So additional energy will be required for this change in momentum. So in indirect band gap semiconductor, the electron requires additional energy for the change in momentum in addition to the energy gap Eg. The compound semiconductors such as GaAs, which are obtained by mixing group 3 element and group 5 elements, are usually direct gap semiconductors, and the elemental semiconductors like silicon, germanium are the indirect gap semiconductors. These indirect gap semiconductors, silicon, germanium, they are not useful for fabrication of light emitting diodes or semiconductor laser, because the energy gap will be such that the corresponding wavelength will not lie in the visible region in this case. And these direct gap semiconductors, which are obtained by mixing group 3 element and group 5 element in different proportions, can be utilized in the fabrication of light emitting diode and semiconductor laser. So we are at the end of session 1 on semiconductor physics. In this session, we discussed some of the prerequisites required for further discussion, like formation of energy bands, classification of solids on the basis of energy band diagram, intrinsic semiconductor, extrinsic semiconductor, direct gap semiconductor and indirect gap semiconductor. I hope you must have enjoyed this session. If you like this session, then please subscribe to my channel. In the further sessions on semiconductor physics, we will be discussing Fermi energy level and Fermi function, conductivity, current density and mobility. Then we will discuss the phenomenon called Hall effect, PN junction diode characteristics, and at the end, in the last session, we will be discussing applications of semiconductors. So thank you for watching. Thank you very much.